You are the pearl of great price, and you are the buried treasure. Jesus is the merchant. He sold everything he had to buy you free so that if you wanted to, you could become part of his family. He took all the problems of your life as his problems. He bought the whole field of dirt because in that field, he found a buried treasure, you. You know, as I was thinking about that this week, I was thinking about, would I be willing to sell everything I had to buy a stranger free, to make a stranger a part of my family? And honestly, I don't think that I probably would do that, right? Like maybe if it was someone I already love, someone who was already in my family, I'd be willing to sell everything I had for them. But if it was someone I didn't know, I don't think I probably would take on all the problems of their life as my problems. I don't know if I'd be able to do, if I would choose to do what Jesus chose to do for you and me. And as I was praying about that, it was like I kind of had Jesus poking me on the side, right? Kind of saying to me, that's okay, Aaron. I know you wouldn't do what I would do. That's because you don't see what I see. You don't know these people the way I do. If you did, you might choose to love as I loved. Because when I see them, I see wonders, treasures, pearls. My eyes see wonders. Welcome to week 2 of Seeing Wonders. This message series is about the truth that Jesus' eyes, when he looked around, he saw wonders. And as his disciples, little by little, we're supposed to become people whose eyes see wonders also. In each of the parables today, the 2 big ones that we started with, those parables point to the wonders that Jesus sees in us. The main character in both of these parables does something that to outsiders seems kind of crazy. The merchant sells everything he has. The man, ordinary guy, takes every single piece of money he can borrow, he can beg, he can get his hands on, and uses it to buy a field of dirt that looks like any other field of dirt. But what looks crazy to outsiders, if you're on the inside, makes perfect sense. This is the pearl of great price. There is treasure buried in that field. Jesus told us that these parables are parables of the kingdom. So they're telling us about how things are in Jesus' kingdom between him and us. Jesus' eyes saw wonders in us that made him buy the whole field. And he asks us step by step to do practical things that make us more like him, that make us people who see wonders too. And that's why it's so important that each of us have ways to connect regularly with other believers. When we're connecting regularly with other believers, that means we're on the path to see wonders, to see glory. Look, we all want to see wonders. We all want to see glory. Jesus wants that for us too. He knows how it would help us love people more, love God more if we saw more wonders, if we saw more glories. But the thing is, under the sun, in God's creation, the greatest wonder is a human being. And the greatest glory is God's love pouring into a human life and shining from it. And most of that happens quietly, humbly, behind the scenes, in the details of daily life. This is even true for famous people. You know, maybe take King Solomon, for example. He was a famous person who showed up in our first reading. If you had met King Solomon when he was just getting started as a king, as his reign was beginning, he might have seemed like a lot of average, ordinary, normal, ancient Near Eastern kings, right? He was busy consolidating his power. He was sidelining or eliminating his enemies. He was willing to make a lot of sacrifices to get what he wanted. The only way you would have known that Solomon was a pearl, that he was something exceptional, would be if somehow you got behind the scenes of his life. If you were able to hear his prayers the way God could hear him when he prayed. Because Solomon, when he had a chance to pray for anything he wanted, he didn't ask for a long life or for riches or for the life of his enemies. He asked for understanding so that he could know God's will, so that he'd be able to be a better king, a better servant of God's people. Solomon really was someone exceptional. He was a buried treasure. And what's true of famous people, right, is also true of ordinary people, right? It's just with the famous people, sometimes you find it out easier because people write books about them and you get to hear the story later. Ordinary people, you probably ain't going to find out about by reading a book about them. The way you're going to learn the wonder in them, the glory, the buried treasure there, is if you're connecting with them, if you're sharing life with them. This was a really huge gift I got when I was in a small group with our church last spring. I was part of the men's small group Thursday late morning, right? And there were 5 or 6 guys in my small group with me. I had met these people before, in that kind of casual church way, shake hands with them, say hi at church. With a couple of them, we'd even worked on projects together a little bit. But it was only when we started meeting regularly, studying God's Word together, them getting support from me getting support from them, that was when I started to see things that were remarkable in these men. I learned what was going on behind the scenes. I saw the wonder of how the widowers in our group had this deep grief after the loss of their wives because they had deeply loved their wives and received their wives' love. They built a life together. I saw how the men in my group, they took great delight in their children. I learned about how some of them were helping people out quietly in ways that I did not know they were doing, like taking care of people that they felt like, God wanted them to look out for. And we're studying God's Word together, right? Sometimes that was pretty challenging for all of this, them and me together. But it was really cool. It was really wonderful to see how these men, they wanted to respond to the challenge in God's Word, even when it was kind of hard to figure out how to actually do what God might be asking us to do. Like, what did that mean in practice? They wanted to respond. And this is why I really would love for you to have a gift like that in your life. Because it's not just true that when you get to know someone, it helps you love that person more. When you start connecting more deeply with other believers, seeing the wonder in their life, well, that just kind of helps you love everybody a little more. It helps you love God more. This kind of fun thing happens where after God surprises you a few times and you see wonder in people's lives in ways you did not suspect it was going to be there, it just sort of like raises the baseline of how much compassion you have for other people, of how much, you're giving people the benefit of the doubt, because you're thinking, I've gotten surprised a lot before. There's probably a lot more of that going on. There's probably a lot of wonder in people's lives that I'm not aware of. And on the side of loving God more, in St. Paul, he tells us all things work for the good for those who love God. That's something pretty amazing about God, right? How it makes us love him, how he takes everything in our lives, has it work for the good. But seeing that in people's lives, you got to be sharing the details with them. And that's what can happen if you more regularly connect your life with the life of other believers. So I hope you'll think about it. What's a way that you could more regularly connect with other believers, share life together, support each other? In our church, St. Stephen Proto-Martyr Parish, we're going to have some new opportunities for that coming up in the fall. We'll tell you about that later. For today, though, here's our invitation. I'd like you to, if you want to, use your imagination to think about one of your literal neighbors, right? A person who literally lives or works next to you, a literal neighbor of yours. Try to use your imagination to imagine what might be going on in that person's life that makes them a buried treasure, a pearl of great price. What's that wonder in their life that most people don't know about, but that Jesus knows is there? Could it be that they've gone through some suffering that almost no one knows about, but they're persevering, still trying to love? Could it be that there's someone that they're taking care of, or a good deed they're doing that they're not getting credit for? They're doing it for the love of it. Most people don't even know that they're making the world better by that good deed they do. You and me, when we're using our imagination like that, are we going to figure out what's really there? I don't know. Maybe we'll guess it. Maybe we won't guess it. But here's one thing we do know for absolute certain. Jesus saw something in them that made him decide to buy the whole field. Just like he saw that in you and he saw it in me. And he wants us to become people who see wonders.